Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to be emotionally ghosted by your own spouse while still living in the same house, then buckle up, because this is what happened to me. I woke up this morning to a note on the bathroom mirror. Not a love note, not a silly joke, not even a pick up more toothpaste kind of thing. It said, "Don't wait up. I'll be late again." I stared at it for a full minute. The ink had bled slightly from the steam of the early shower she took. Like even the mirror was tired of reflecting our reality. You know that sinking feeling you get when you realize you've become an afterthought in someone else's life? That was my breakfast. No eggs. Just that. My name is Clarkson, and I am, apparently, in an invisible marriage. We've been married 9 years. No kids. No big fights. No screaming matches. Just quiet distance and this slow, excruciating erosion of attention, like water dripping on stone. And last night was our anniversary. 9 years to the day. I had planned nothing grand, nothing cinematic. I made her favorite pasta, lemon ricotta, thin spaghetti, a little chili oil on top. I cleaned the apartment. I even wore a blue button-up because she once said it brought out the color in my eyes. She didn't come home. No call. No message. Nothing. And now, this morning, I get a 3-second sticky note like I'm a colleague she's brushing off. I stood there, toothbrush in hand, reading it over and over. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I stared long enough, it would rearrange itself into something that didn't feel like emotional eviction. But the truth hit me somewhere between spit and rinse. She ignored our anniversary, after ignoring my attempts at connection for months. I used to try. I really did. I'd reach out in the smallest ways, brush her arm when I passed by, bring her tea in the evenings, try to ask how her day was. But her responses had become mechanical. Nods. Half smiles. Fine. Busy. Don't start. And intimacy? Forget it. She treated physical closeness like it was some kind of chore she couldn't be bothered to put on the calendar. Like wanting to feel her warmth made me needy. Like affection was an obligation she never signed up for. I thought I was being patient. I told myself she was just stressed, or tired, or whatever new excuse I could invent for her silence. But there comes a point where you stop making excuses and start taking notes. Literally. So I wrote one back. I walked over to the fridge and stuck my own little yellow square beside hers. I won't wait. I stopped waiting last night. And then I left the apartment. I didn't go to work. I didn't go for a walk. I just drove. No GPS. No destination. Just the hollow sound of tires on pavement and this buzzing in my skull that kept saying, "This isn't what love feels like." At around 11 a.m., I stopped at a coffee shop we used to go to, Madeline's Bean, and I sat there watching couples hold hands, teenagers laugh, and an old man smile while showing a picture of his granddaughter to the barista. And I felt like I was on another planet. When did I become a ghost in my own story? I went home an hour later. The sticky notes were gone. So was she. And just when I thought I had hit the low point, when I was ready to accept that maybe we were just two strangers wearing rings out of habit, I saw her phone lighting up on the kitchen counter. One message preview. Just one. But it said everything. And no, I'm not going to tell you what it said, not yet. Because once I opened it, nothing in my life was the same again. When I tell you, I almost didn't look at her phone. I mean it. I stood there, just staring at the glowing screen on the kitchen counter like it was some forbidden artifact. My palms were sweating, my mouth dry, and my heart doing this awful out-of-rhythm pounding that made my whole chest feel uneven. I could have walked away. I should have. But the notification preview had already cracked something open inside me, and now there was no gluing it shut. It wasn't just the name that got me, Milo. It was the way the preview line ended mid-sentence. Last night was. That was it. Just those 3 words. But my brain filled in 1,000 different endings. Last night was amazing. Last night was a mistake. Last night was worth the risk. My hands moved before my conscience could stop them. I picked up the phone, and of course it was locked. But here's the thing about being with someone for almost a decade, you know things. Like the fact that Roxanne never changed her passcode. 12/26, her late mother's birthday. I punched it in like muscle memory. And just like that, I was inside. The chat thread with Milo wasn't at the top. She had swiped it away, probably thinking that'd be enough. But when I scrolled down a bit, there it was. A little moon emoji and a string of messages that felt like needles under my skin. I won't share all the details here. Not because I'm trying to be cryptic, but because honestly, some of it still makes me nauseous. But I will say this. It confirmed everything I had been too afraid to admit. She hadn't just been distant. She hadn't just been tired. She had checked out. Emotionally, physically, all of it. And she had checked in somewhere else. With him. There were messages from days I remembered. Days when I had tried to surprise her with coffee at work, only to get a quick wave and a busy excuse. Days when she said she was going to yoga. Days when I waited up late with a reheated plate of food and fake optimism. One line, in particular, hit me like a punch to the chest. It's like I'm just playing a role with him. I don't even feel guilty anymore. I stared at that sentence for what felt like hours. My reflection in the black screen behind the chat bubbles looked like someone else. Pale. Hollow-eyed. Lost. I didn't cry. Not yet. I think my brain was still buffering. Instead, I sat down at the dining table, the same one I had set for 2 the night before, and I tried to breathe through the sense of absurdity. This was my life. This was how I found out. Not a fight. Not a confession. Just a text message with a moon emoji and a timestamp that lined up perfectly with our forgotten anniversary. I heard the front door open around 1:20 p.m. Roxanne walked in like nothing was off. Hair in a messy bun, oversized cardigan, shopping bag in one hand, keys in the other. She paused when she saw me, her eyes flicking to the phone on the table between us like it was radioactive. There was a 2-second silence I'll never forget. Then she said, "Were you going through my phone?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in a long while, I realized how unfamiliar she had become to me. Like someone I once met in a dream and then forgot by morning. Her face hardened when I didn't respond. That's a violation, Clarkson. Seriously. That word. Violation. I nearly laughed. I almost choked on it. "I made you dinner last night," I finally said. My voice cracked a little, like an old record. "It was our anniversary." She blinked, then shifted her weight, trying to seem casual. "Yeah, I was out late. I didn't realize the time. I told you I've been busy lately." "With Milo?" Her jaw clenched. That was the first time I saw even a flicker of guilt cross her face. "You had no right." "I had every right." I snapped, the words louder than I intended. "You don't get to vanish from this marriage and then act shocked when I try to figure out what the hell happened to my wife." She stood there, lips pressed into a thin line, the shopping bag dangling awkwardly by her side. "I'm not having this conversation right now," she said, and turned toward the hallway. But I wasn't finished. "No, you're not walking away. Not again. You've been walking away in slow motion for over a year, and I just kept standing here like a damn doormat, hoping you'd look back. Hoping you'd remember what we had. What we are. But you didn't. You chose him." The silence after that was deafening. She didn't deny it. She didn't scream or cry. She just walked into the bedroom and shut the door softly behind her. And that's when I finally cried. Not the kind of dramatic, messy sobbing you see in movies. No, mine came in stutters. In ugly gasps. In the kind of silence that makes your ribs ache. She stayed in that room for hours. I stayed on the floor of the hallway, leaning against the wall like a man who'd just been mugged by his own reality. And somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m., I made a decision. If I was just a role to her, I'd write my own ending, but not the way she expected. The next morning, I expected the tension in the apartment to be so thick I'd need a chainsaw just to walk to the kitchen. But no, Roxanne acted like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't thrown her affair in her face. Like I hadn't spent the night curled up on the living room floor with a pillow I stole off our bed. She made herself a smoothie. Chia seeds. Almond butter. One of those overpriced powders, she said, helped with clarity. She didn't say good morning. Didn't ask how I slept. She barely even looked at me. I just sat there at the dining table watching her, silently, trying to figure out if she was faking being calm or if she really just didn't care anymore. I had her phone now. I didn't take it out of malice. I took it because she left it in the living room and I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't let go. And what I found wasn't what I expected. Sure, there were the texts with Milo, a history of slowly growing flirtation, clever emojis, and emotionally intimate things she hadn't said to me in years. But that wasn't the part that twisted my stomach into a pretzel. It was her calendar. She had a shared calendar app one never knew about. Not linked to her work account. Not on our family tablet. Just hers. I tapped it open, expecting yoga, maybe dinner plans. But what I saw was worse. There were entries titled things like lunch, park, offsite project, meeting, sat, Sleepover or no calls. The worst one, a note for this weekend. It read, Beach House Escape. Pack light. Bring courage. And I just sat there thinking, pack courage? For what? I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Like I'd wandered into some parallel version of my own life where the woman I married had a whole secret storyline playing out right beside mine. And I never even saw the curtain lift. I didn't confront her about it right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed time to understand the script she was reading from. So I did something uncharacteristic. Something pathetic and beneath me, and exactly what someone like me would do when he doesn't know how to stand up for himself. I followed her. Not immediately. I waited a few hours. Let her do her smoothie thing. Let her say she was going out to clear her head. She even said it with this tiny smirk, like she was testing me to see if I'd beg or snap. But I just said, okay, take your time. She left, with a little too much perfume, and that crossbody bag she only ever used when she wanted to feel casual chic. I waited 20 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys, my hoodie, and my worst instincts, and followed. She didn't go to the park. She didn't go to her sister's. She didn't even go to a coffee shop to read and pretend to be overwhelmed with life. She drove 38 minutes across the bridge into a side neighborhood I hadn't seen in years. I watched from 2 cars back as she parked near a bakery and got out like she belonged there. And then, like it was nothing, she walked straight into a house. A house, not a store, not a friend's place. I parked, heart beating loud enough to count as a medical concern, and waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. At the 20-minute mark, I saw someone else appear in the doorway. It was him. I knew it was him. Milo. Tan skin, annoyingly good posture, and that easy grin people like me haven't had since middle school. He hugged her like he'd been doing it for years. Kissed her temple like it was routine. And she leaned into it. I didn't cry this time. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel and wondering if this was what rock bottom looked like. But no, rock bottom wasn't watching your wife with another man. It was realizing she'd rehearsed this moment enough to be casual about it. They went back inside. I waited another 20 minutes, because I'm an idiot, and then I drove home. When I walked into our apartment, everything felt off. Her presence still lingered, but it didn't feel like she lived here anymore. It felt like she was slowly replacing me with someone new, someone who probably didn't forget anniversaries or say not tonight 8 times a week. But then I noticed something strange. One of the drawers in our hallway table was open. It was where we kept documents, bills, receipts, rental agreements. Inside was a thin blue folder that didn't belong. I pulled it out, thinking maybe it was old mail or something she meant to shred. Instead, I found printed confirmation emails. Flights, rental bookings, 2 tickets, 1 hotel room. Dates matched the weekend note. But what truly made my stomach flip? There was a second sheet. A notarized letter, with my name at the top. It was a financial transfer request, a pre-authorized withdrawal from one of our joint accounts. Signed, dated, already processed. She had already taken the money. Our anniversary hadn't just been forgotten. It had been a distraction, one I didn't even realize I was part of. And that's when something inside me snapped. Not with rage, but with clarity. If she was going to write the ending of our marriage without me, I'd write a beginning of my own, one she didn't see coming. I sat on the couch for hours after finding the financial transfer papers, just staring at the blue folder on the coffee table like it was breathing. The late afternoon sun crept through the blinds, striping the floor in bands of light and shadow, and all I could think was, she didn't just check out. She made an exit plan. Every tiny act of coldness over the past year suddenly clicked into place. She wasn't distant because she was tired. She was pulling away because she already had 1 foot out the door and a reservation with someone who wasn't me. What made it worse was the amount. She hadn't cleaned us out. No, that would have felt obvious, scandalous. Instead, she moved just enough to make it look like an accident if I ever noticed. A little over $9,300. $9,300 to rewrite her life without me in it. And I don't know what broke me more, the number itself or the fact that it didn't even buy her guilt. I stood up too fast. My knees cracked like old furniture. I felt dizzy, not from rage, but from that awful, sinking nothingness that creeps in when the person you love treats your entire relationship like a dying plant they forgot to water years ago. I didn't yell. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I did what I always do. I overthought everything silently. But then something strange happened. While pacing the hallway, I kicked over her tote bag by accident, the one she always tossed by the door when she was in a hurry. Some receipts spilled out, along with a charger, a lip balm, and her old Bluetooth headphones. The ones she stopped using last year when she said they started glitching. They were blinking, still charged. Curious, or maybe desperate for more proof, I connected them to my laptop, opened her folder of synced audio files. Yes, she once used them to record voice memos and save her grocery lists, and found something new. One file, dated 3 nights ago. No label, just a timestamp. I hesitated. I knew this was a boundary I was about to bulldoze. But after everything she'd already crossed, her secrecy, her emotional theft, the money, I tapped play. And the moment I heard her voice, I froze. She was laughing softly, not the kind of laugh she used around me. This was quieter, personal, like she was whispering straight into someone's ear. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," she said, her voice low, confessional. "Every time he looks at me like I'm still his person, I feel like I'm lying to a puppy. It's cruel." Then a silence, some shuffling, then another voice. His. "Milos, you're not cruel. You're just scared to leave." Her sigh sounded like it came from the bottom of her soul. "I think part of me just wants him to be the one who walks away. That way I don't have to be the villain." I paused the file. My hands were shaking. My ears were burning. So that's what I was now, a puppy. A pitiful, clueless creature whose pain was merely an obstacle in her escape narrative. She wasn't cheating on me out of lust or loneliness. She was waiting for me to make it easier for her to leave. It was calculated, cowardly, and I'd been playing along like a fool. I didn't press play again. I didn't need to. I closed the laptop, put the headphones back in her bag, and walked to the kitchen, my mind blank except for one thought. She wants me to walk away. But I wouldn't. Not yet. See, Roxanne thought she was playing chess. That I was stuck in some emotional fog, too soft and sentimental to see the board clearly. But what she didn't realize was that I had just moved my first piece. Because if she wanted a clean exit, she should have picked someone who didn't know the password to everything. Her email? Accessed. Her alternate Venmo account? Found. Her emergency contact listed under a fake name? Milo, with a burner number. And buried deep in her email trash folder, likely forgotten or maybe just lazily discarded, was a forwarded hotel confirmation with one tiny detail she never expected me to notice. The reservation was made under my name. She used my info, my name, my credit card, probably to make it easier or more discreet. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't just planning a weekend away. She was planning to disappear and leave me as the footprint. And so, I made a few reservations of my own. I didn't sleep the night before the trip. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spin in slow, hypnotic loops while Roxanne breathed softly beside me. The same woman who once begged me to never let her go, now dreaming beside a man she'd emotionally euthanized. I kept replaying the voice memo in my head. Part of me just wants him to be the one who walks away. And the thing is, that sentence used to break me. Now, it fueled me. Friday morning, she woke up humming. She hadn't hummed in over a year. And now she was doing it while brushing her hair and zipping up her weekender bag like she was headed off to some wellness retreat where she'd recharge her soul and bury our marriage without witnesses. I played my part. I sat at the kitchen island, drinking lukewarm coffee and nodding absent-mindedly while she said things like, "I'll be unreachable for most of the weekend, spotty reception, and all that." Her eyes never really met mine. Just flickers. Ghostly. "Take all the time you need," I said, and smiled. She seemed relieved. That probably should have hurt. But at this point, I was operating on something colder than pain. She left around 10:30 a.m. with a casual wave and a chirpy, "See you Sunday night." She didn't notice the duffel bag already in my trunk, or that I wasn't dressed for work, or that the blue folder she thought she'd hidden was now missing from the hallway drawer. By 11:15, I was on the road behind her. Not too close, not too obvious. Just enough distance to breathe the same highway air and know exactly when she pulled off onto the coastal exit. The place she booked, the so-called beach house escape, was more isolated than I expected. Just one long gravel road, a canopy of pine trees, and a 2-story rental tucked against the dunes like a secret. Romantic. Private. I parked a few blocks down and waited. Around noon, Milo arrived. Of course he did. I watched them hug in the driveway, bags slung over shoulders. Both laughing like this was the start of some beautiful new chapter, the kind where they get to be free, spontaneous, and self-righteous about abandoning a man they both treated like a footnote. They disappeared inside. I gave it an hour. Then I drove to the side of the house where the host's lockbox was installed. You see, when you book a place through someone else's account, you forget little things like automated texts, confirmation emails, access codes. I had all of them. I unlocked the backup entrance. And no, I didn't confront them. That wasn't the plan. I had no interest in some dramatic scene. I didn't want yelling, or crying, or the cliché of catching two people half-dressed in bed and shouting something like, "How could you?" They already answered that question, quietly, with every decision they made over the past year. Instead, I left something. I walked into the master bedroom, the one they were now using, and I placed 3 things on the nightstand, neatly stacked. A printed copy of the bank statement showing the withdrawal she authorized, a copy of the voice memo transcript, a small envelope containing my wedding ring, and a handwritten note. The note said exactly this: "You wanted me to walk away. So I did. But not before letting you feel the weight of your choices. Enjoy your freedom. You earned every inch of it." Clarkson. I didn't slam the door on the way out. I didn't even close it fully. Let the wind do that. I left the house, got back in my car, and drove straight to the city. No tears, no music, just silence and the faint buzz of adrenaline in my veins. And I wish I could say that was the end, that I left, she read the letter, and life moved on. That would have been tidy. But Roxanne doesn't do tidy. And neither does betrayal. Because 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. And what I heard when I answered was not her voice. It was his. And he wasn't angry. He was shaking. I almost didn't pick up the call. I stared at the unknown number blinking on my screen as I sat at a red light in midtown traffic, fingers frozen above the steering wheel, brain cycling through whether I had the emotional bandwidth for whatever was about to happen. But curiosity, as always, is my curse. So I answered. And for a second, there was nothing, just static and faint breathing. Then the voice came through. Not Roxanne's. Milo's. But it didn't sound like the smug, smooth-talking guy I'd imagined all this time. No, he sounded off. His voice cracked on the first word. Clarkson. I didn't say anything. I wanted to hear what he had to say before I let my temper respond. I think you should come get her, he said. That was the first sentence that made my blood run cold. What do you mean, get her? I asked. My voice was flat, but my fingers gripped the wheel so hard I felt my knuckles pop. She locked herself in the bathroom. She won't come out. She read your note, and... Man, I didn't know, okay? I didn't know you knew. I didn't know she took the money. I didn't know she was lying like that. I blinked. That last line hit me differently. He didn't know? This was the man she had risked everything for. And yet, she hadn't told him the full story. She hadn't told him about the account, about the manipulation, about how she had engineered her escape using pieces of my life like disposable puzzle parts. What did she say? I asked, voice low. There was a pause on the other end. Then a breath. She kept saying it wasn't supposed to happen like this, that you were never supposed to find out. And then she started crying. Hard. She's not answering me anymore. I think she's having some kind of panic attack. I should have felt something. Anger, maybe. Or triumph. But all I felt was tired. I left her everything she needed to know, I said. And now she has to live with it. He was quiet. Then, quietly, he added, she said something else. I waited. She said there's something you don't know. Something she planned to tell you before leaving. But she chickened out. Said it would have ruined more than just your marriage. Now I was gripping the phone, mouth dry, heart racing again. What is it? I asked. She wouldn't say. Just kept repeating that it was all her fault. That she made a choice years ago she couldn't undo, and she was too much of a coward to fix it. Years ago? Not months. Not during her affair. Not during the distance. Years. And suddenly, my mind went into overdrive. I started flashing back to things I hadn't thought about in forever. Conversations that didn't add up. Silent nights where she clung to me tighter than usual, but said less. Decisions she made without me. A hospital visit in year 3 of our marriage that she said was routine. A random name on a credit card charge that didn't belong to either of us. Was there more? Had this entire thing, this unraveling, started long before Milo? I hung up without saying goodbye. The idea of going back to that beach house made my stomach churn. I didn't want to see her. Not like that. Not curled up behind a bathroom door pretending to be the victim of a plan she orchestrated. But I couldn't stop thinking about what Milo said. She made a choice years ago she couldn't undo. Back at my apartment, I poured myself a drink I didn't finish. I sat at my desk and opened my computer. I pulled up bank records, emails, messages, receipts. I scanned through everything I could remember having access to. And then I remembered something weird, a password reset email from an account I didn't recognize. One she must have used ages ago and forgotten I ever saw. I dug it up. It was linked to a secure file-sharing service. And inside, a folder, titled simply, "If It Ever Comes Out." There were 3 documents inside. I clicked the first one, and what I saw froze every single part of me. Not because it was violent, or scandalous, or dramatic, but because it explained everything. Every choice, every lie, every layer of distance. Roxanne had been hiding something so enormous, so quietly devastating, that suddenly all the things I thought were the worst parts of this marriage, the affair, the stolen money, the manipulation, felt like distractions. Because what she buried wasn't just about me. It involved someone else. Someone I didn't even know existed. And if the timeline was real, it went back 8 years. There are moments in life that split your memory in half. You know the ones where everything before that moment becomes a pale shadow, and everything after it feels like walking through fog barefoot. I hit one of those the second I opened the second document in Roxanne's hidden folder. It was a scanned letter, dated almost 8 years ago, from a clinic in New Jersey. The letterhead was sterile, medical, no drama, no emotion. Just facts. The patient was Roxanne. The file confirmed a termination of pregnancy. 7 weeks. No partner name listed. My name was nowhere on it. And the date? It fell 2 months after our 5th anniversary. Right in the middle of that time, when she said she was feeling unwell and not ready for big life changes. I remembered how I made her soup, rubbed her back, offered to cut back my hours in case she needed more emotional support. I even suggested we take a weekend away, just the 2 of us. She told me I was being too sensitive, that she just needed space. What she needed was secrecy. I stared at the document like it was written in another language. Part of me wanted to believe it wasn't real, that maybe she saved someone else's file, that it was an old scan from a friend. But the email address matched hers. The insurance ID matched our old joint policy. And the worst part? There was a note attached. A short paragraph written in her voice, saved as a separate file titled, I couldn't say it out loud. It read, "You were never supposed to know. I made a decision because I was scared, not of being a parent, of what it would do to us. We were already starting to fade, and I knew if I told you, you'd stay for the wrong reasons. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have told you everything. But I didn't. And I hate that part of me that still doesn't know if I regret the decision or just the silence that followed it." I read it 3 times. I don't remember crying. I don't even remember breathing. All I could think was, she took away something from me without even giving me the chance to grieve it. A child. Maybe my child. Maybe not. Maybe there was more to that story, a name I still hadn't uncovered. But the truth was, I had lived through 8 years of marriage thinking the deepest betrayal was in the present. But no, it had always lived in the past. That night, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even stand being in the same apartment where we used to argue over laundry and what movie to watch. All of it seemed so painfully, pathetically small now. And yet, I wasn't angry in the way I expected. I was hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and replaced them with wet silence. I thought about driving back to the beach house. Not to scream, not to fight, just to look at her, to see her one last time and ask a single question. Why didn't I matter enough to tell the truth to? But I didn't drive. I sat. In the dark. At 2:17 a.m., I got another call. This time, from her number. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My body literally wouldn't move to pick it up. She left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it until the sun was up and the light made me feel like a human being again. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Clarkson, I know what you found. I figured you would eventually. You always were better at putting things together than I gave you credit for. I know you hate me right now. I deserve it. But please don't think this was ever about not loving you. I loved you too much. That was the problem. I made a choice I thought would protect us, and I think I destroyed us instead." I replayed that last sentence over and over. Protect us. That was her logic. She thought she was protecting us by ending a pregnancy and hiding it from me for nearly a decade. How do you protect someone by stealing their right to feel pain? The next morning, I packed a single suitcase. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. I'd already said everything I needed to say when I walked out of that beach house without raising my voice. And this time, when I closed the door behind me, I didn't expect to come back. But just as I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Not from Roxanne. From someone else. Someone who had never contacted me before. The message was 5 words long. And it was the most unexpected, jarring twist in this entire story. It said, "You don't know the full truth." And it was signed. M. Not Milo. Someone else entirely. The message simply read, "You don't know the full truth." And it was signed. M. Not Milo. My first instinct was to assume a typo. A delayed text. Maybe some cruel spam. But something about the timing, the finality of Roxanne's voicemail, it just didn't sit right. So I replied, "Who is this?" The response came seconds later. "My name is Meredith. We've never met. But I'm the social worker Roxanne met with in 2017. She asked me to reach out to you if she couldn't." The words felt alien. I read them twice, blinking against the sterile glow of the hotel lamp beside me. Meredith followed up with a phone number and an offer. "If you want the full story, I can tell you what Roxanne never could." I don't know why I said yes. Maybe because I was too exhausted not to. Maybe because when you've been lied to for that long, any sliver of truth feels like oxygen. I called, and for the next 42 minutes, I listened to a version of Roxanne I had never known. Meredith told me that 8 years ago, Roxanne didn't just terminate a pregnancy. She was diagnosed with something else, a rare autoimmune condition that carried a significant risk if she carried to term. The pregnancy had been a surprise, but the diagnosis had blindsided her. She hadn't told me because she was convinced it would break me. She was scared I'd resent her for choosing herself, that I'd feel betrayed before I even had a chance to process the truth. She did everything quietly, Meredith said, kept it buried, because her guilt turned into fear, and fear, over time, calcified into distance. The affair? It didn't begin as betrayal. It began as escape. She had spent years feeling like she was living under the weight of an unforgivable decision. Milo had come along and offered something I never could: ignorance. He didn't know her past. He didn't carry the shadow of that pain. And she could pretend, for a moment, that she was still someone worth loving. By the time she realized Milo didn't understand her, it was too late. The damage between her and me had already ossified. "But she never stopped loving you," Meredith added. "That's why she broke down at the beach house. Not because she got caught, but because she knew you finally saw the version of her she hated most." When I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. No music, no tears, just clarity. Sometimes, the people we love make impossible choices. And sometimes, the weight of those choices makes them someone we don't recognize. But love, real love, doesn't always vanish. Sometimes it hides behind layers of pain, guilt, and poor decisions. And maybe, just maybe, it deserves a chance to breathe again. I didn't go back immediately. I stayed away for a week. Let things cool. Let myself feel the grief, all of it. And when I did finally call Roxanne, her voice cracked as soon as she heard mine. She apologized, not just for the affair, or the lies, but for letting the silence become our language. We met at a park. No drama. Just two people who had unraveled and somehow found the thread again. We talked for hours. And while I didn't promise anything that day, not reconciliation, not forgiveness, I did say this: "I don't hate you. I never did. I just needed to understand what I was hurting for." And she nodded, quietly wiping her eyes. That was 6 months ago. Since then, we've started over. Not as a couple. Not yet. But as two people committed to truth. No more silence. No more pretending. And for the first time in years, I feel free. Not because I moved on, but because I stopped being afraid of the truth. Thanks for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever learned a secret that completely changed how you viewed a relationship? Drop it in the comments below. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. And if you made it this far, thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next confession.